Do have one add-on, that is consenting to the reappointment of Alex Went to the City Planning Board.
Would you like to adjourn this meeting?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone want to move to adjourn the informal?
So moved, Estrop.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Informal meeting is adjourned. Still have a minute and 7.
These new screens are much easier to, wow.
Figured virtual op probably here to stay.
Yeah,
think we-
I think it's a good option even
Thank you.
after COVID
Oh, yeah.
passes. There's
All
some
right.
folks that would watch it at home and participate, but may not be able to get down here, or choose to
You
get
know how
down
to
here.
move the machines, that's the key.
My son has that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go back farther.
Okay, the meeting of the city commission is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Here.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Mr. Rue,
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here, please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for the opportunity to gather here in the place that we used to, olden days. Really glad to be back. Glad to be able to open up a bit, at least for citizens to be here and participate with us. I think that's a better democratic way. Please help us make good decisions. In your name we pray.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of last meeting?
So moved, Estrop.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. The clerk will proceed with reading of first readings by title only.
Confirming and approving a development incentive agreement, single-family residential development with Elise R. Funderburg to provide for sewer services to real property outside the city limits. To amend ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, by amending certain provisions of the traffic and general offenses codes. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a plat agreement, Bridgewater Subdivision Phase 3, between the city and Bridgewater Project 1 LLC, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and finance director to do all things necessary to implement the said plat agreement, Bridgewater Subdivision Phase 3. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a land lease agreement with FETI Aviation LLC, consisting of approximately 0.25 acre. Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the contract with Gary Gilbert Jr., doing business as Gilbert's Lawn Service, for abatement and nuisance condition services as needed by the city to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for a total amount not to exceed $70,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the contract with OMAC Hauling Incorporated for abatement and nuisance condition services as needed by the city to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for a total amount not to exceed $70,000.
Other questions or comments from commissioners on first read? Mr. Estrop.
Thank you, Mayor Copeland. I'm wondering if someone on staff could explain specifically, or virtually, item 105-21, just specifically what are we changing?
Yes, so commissioners, this is an update as we work with the city's codifier to update provisions that happen at the state level. So with state code changes to reflect into our own codified ordinances. Due to COVID, the codifier was behind, so this goes back to the last time an update was done in 2019. And so this update includes years 2020 and part of 21 changes that have occurred already.
So this, in essence, just brings the city into compliance with law changes that were made at the state.
I have a question on that for our police chief. The one that I had a question on was 331.43, wearing of earplugs and earphones being prohibited. Could you talk about that for a minute, please?
Commissioner, could you give me the number again on that?
It's the traffic code number, but we're looking at 105-21 on the agenda.
Mm.
But the traffic code says wearing earplug or earphones prohibited. And it spans the definitions for earphones and earplug, adds exception for hearing protection while operating a motorcycle.
Yeah, and what that is it's the basic tilt towards distracted driving, you know, for purposes other than like hearing protection for a motorcycle. They may wear that to protect your ears from the environment. But for the average motorist, we're talking about people that are wearing earbuds for their iPhones or things like that, where they're not going to be able to hear what's going on around them. However, for them and for special heavy machinery operators, they acknowledge the fact that, you know, the loud noises from the motor can damage the ears. But even there, motorcyclists aren't supposed to be listening to music on, like, say, headphones or anything. They're supposed to have noise canceling device where they can still hear around them, but they don't hear the general noise of the motor and the out.
It's just to not have distracted drivers. Okay,
Yes, absolutely.
thank you.
Mr. Estrop.
Yes, I was also, I take item 106-21 as very good news that we're moving to phase 3 with the Bridgewater subdivision. Are sales still very positive out there? Would you care to comment on?
Yes, so this is specifically for the Bridgewater development, which is better known to some as Ryan Homes, that is building out on the east end of the community. They have completed the infrastructure for phase 1 and phase 2. They've sold out almost entirely of phase 1 lots and have begun selling phase 2 lots. This would allow them to begin construction on phase 3, which would bring an additional 56 to 52 lots online for sale.
So given the housing shortage that we're experiencing in Springfield, this is very good news.
Yes.
And will help us deal with the market rate side of the housing issue.
Yeah, certainly. Again, as GOPC indicated and has indicated in previous reports, you know, we need to focus on the broad spectrum of housing, which includes new housing, rebuilding and revitalizing existing neighborhoods and our legacy neighborhoods, infill housing, and development. So yes, this is definitely a step in the right direction, but a lot more to do.
Thank you.
I want to, if I could for a moment, could we return to 105-21 again, Lee, on this earplug thing? I need a clarification on that. Are we saying it's going to be against the law for somebody to have an earphone in his ear if he's not using it at all? Does he have to take it out, or how does that work?
Well, the way that would work, Commissioner, is essentially if an officer identifies that during part of a traffic stop or something like that, we're not going to be able to say whether or not that was turned on or off. But that doesn't mean they can't be cited for it. Then they're going to have to go into court and the burden of proof is on them and the court system to take care of that. It's not that this is new, it's just being more specified. There's always been ordinances and laws against distracted driving. And, people have gotten that in the past, but this is being specific about the earbuds and the earphones because quite frankly, it's become quite a large thing out there in our driving populace. And we all know it's creating distracted drivers that are driving sometimes erratically, in our community.
But I just know some people that put those in the morning, and they never take them out.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
little white things. And I don't even know that they use them a lot. Maybe it's a cosmetic type thing, so if they're wearing one of these, they can be cited for it if they're
Yes.
behind the wheel.
Yes, now in a lot of these crimes like this, like with the seat belts and distract drivers, it can't be the initial reason for the traffic stop. If it's part of the overall package, yes.
And just so we're clear, this is state law anyway.
Right.
We're
Yes,
simply recognizing what the state law is.
yeah, and I'm sorry, Mayor, you're absolutely correct. All we're doing is shoring up our local ordinances with the changes in state.
And
What else?
specifically to that provision on the earplugs, that has been, as Lee indicated, that's been in there. Specifically, they expanded the definition on earphones and earplugs, what makes up, because, they're becoming smaller and so forth. But then it adds the exception for the hearing protection while operating a motorcycle. So it expands the definition of something that already existed on the books, and then it also adds the exception in for the hearing protection as it relates to those individuals operating a motorcycle.
The overall message is for all of us is to do our best to make sure we're paying full time and attention when we're driving, protect ourselves and protect everybody around.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions on first reading?
Yes. One other quick question on 180-20, the Gilbert Lawn Service. I just wanted to make sure that Shannon talked about that $30 that's being added, that is not for one servicer.
Yes, so actually, Steve Thompson, who handles our planning, zoning, and code enforcement, can answer this question.
Yes, Commissioner. So this is part of our junk and trash contract. That contract period started in September, so we're about midway through that contract cycle. And these two contractors, Gilbert's Lawn Service and OMAC Hauling, they're already at their initial not to exceed amount of $40,000. And since we're only partway through that contract year, we thought it best to at least increase these two, OMAC and Gilbert's, so we have plenty of room to operate to remove all the junk and trash that gets dumped in alleys and otherwise does not get removed from properties. So if any of our other junk and trash contractors meet that not to exceed amount, we will bring them forward to increase theirs as well.
Thank you.
So if a citizen knows about an area where there's junk and trash, they should contact who? You?
Yeah, they can contact the city code enforcement general line, which is 937-324-7385, and they can leave an anonymous complaint at any time of day. We also have a report, a concern feature on our website where people can also leave anonymous complaints through the web.
You repeat that number again?
937-324-7385.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Anybody else? Anything else on first reading? Clerk will proceed with second reading.
Authorizing participation in the ODOT winter contract for road salt.
Move
So
to
moved.
adopt.
Second, Estrop.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the issuance of a purchase order for the purchase of 2 stainless steel dump bodies, including bed covers and road temperature sensors, from K.E. Rose Company for an amount not to exceed $183,390.
Move to
Adopt.
adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Estrop?
As I recall, the reason we have to purchase stainless steel, which obviously is more expensive than just regular truck beds, is because of the use of the item we just approved on road salt. Am I correct in remembering that that's why we have to purchase these stainless steel dump bodies?
Yeah, that is correct, and it helps the overall lifespan and prevents that erosion from the salt.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into a cropland lease agreement 2021 to 2025 with Joseph Agel to lease 74.466 acres at the Springfield Beckley Municipal Airport, of which 42.933 acres are tillable farmland, and confirming and approving services provided by Joseph Agel from December 1, 2020 to the passage of this ordinance.
So moved, Estrop.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved, Estrop.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to submit the 2021 action plan of the city of Springfield, Ohio to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Authorizing the city manager, law director, and finance director to enter into grant agreements and to do all things they deem necessary to implement, operate, and administer the city's community development block grant program, emergency solutions grant program, and home program for the 2021 fiscal year, April 1, 2021 to March 31, 2022, and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second, Estrop.
Been moved and seconded. Questions, comments from the commission?
Yes, I just wanted to say kudos to our staff. That's really great. I mean, the report is still online if anyone wants to read it, and they did a great job, Charlotte, compiling it. Thank you.
Absolutely agree, Commissioner. Well done.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a state and municipal lease purchase agreement with Clayton Holdings LLC and related escrow agreement by and among Clayton Holdings LLC, UMB Bank, NA, and the city of Springfield, Ohio, in the principal amount of $451,000 to finance the purchase of one HV 607 SBA truck, one HV 507 SBA truck, and one Ford Super Duty F-550 truck, authorizing the city manager, finance director, city treasurer, and law director to do all things they deem necessary to enter into and complete the subject lease transaction and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second, Estrop.
Moved and seconded. Questions, comments? Estrop?
I know we like to buy locally whenever possible. Is that the case with this 108, 109, and 110 items? Are we getting the trucks from local or not? I see the Ford Super Duty on here, and that specifically is one concern. But I want to make sure, if at all possible, we're buying locally produced trucks.
Yes, Commissioner. So when we have the opportunity to purchase local, we certainly do. I do not believe that these were available locally. Chris Moore can speak to one specifically, the vehicles being purchased, but also what they're replacing, and then how the replacements are being passed down in the organization.
Commissioner, we'll start with the two trucks, the HV 607 and the HV 507. Those are Navistar International's heavy duty series. Those are both purchased from Rush Truck Center which I think their closest facility is in the Huber Heights area, but those are international vehicles. They are replacing international vehicles that will be recycled down into our fleet. The third one, the Ford F-550, is it's kind of an in-between truck that International does not have a good solution for. So we have a handful of these F-550s in our fleet. This one is replacing our water valve operating truck. It's a special unit that actually got burned up in a fire last year. So we're replacing it. But just to clarify, we have 61 Internationals in our fleet. That is the overwhelming majority of our heavy duty vehicles. And we always try to buy Internationals whenever we can make them fit our needs.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Yes, I would like for our city manager to kind of talk a little bit about the fact that this is a lease purchase agreement.
Yeah, actually, Mark, would you like to speak to that?
I'd be happy to. Commissioner, this is a lease. We felt that this was the best way to finance the purchase of these vehicles. It's a 5-year lease for $451,000. The interest rate that we secured was pretty favorable at 1.05%. And it's as I mentioned, a 5-year lease payable in 5 installments, starting with an upfront.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes,
Dr. Estra,
Yes,
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of one 2022 HV 507 SBA truck for an amount not to exceed $75,907.49 from Rush Truck Centers through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
move to adopt.
second, Estra.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes,
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes,
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of one 2022 HV 607 SBA truck for an amount not to exceed $79,840.73 from Rush Truck Centers through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
yes,
Mrs. Chilton,
yes,
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the acceptance of a donation from the Defense Logistics Agency of 8 Dell 17-inch computer monitors valued at $258.76 each, and 6 Marinco remote control spotlights valued at $327.59 each, for a total value of $4,035.62, and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
second, Estra.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
yes,
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes,
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 1 to the contract between the city and Brumball Construction Incorporated for the CLA McCride Avenue project, PID number 104831, to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $31,750.70 for a total amount not to exceed $2,491,901.70, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 1 and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
second, Estra.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Estrop?
I was just curious what prompted the change order, what was the reason for it?
Yes, commissioners, I will have Chris Moore.
Commissioner, there are 4 items that really make up this change order. One of those, the largest, is some changes to the crosswalks up around the Lagonda School. We're going to be installing some high visibility crosswalks in that location. Um, Another is in relationship to the water line. As the water line's been put in, we are going to add some temporary asphalt. So when the traffic is put back in that area, it's a little better for the motoring public. We made a change to our catch basins to eliminate a 6-inch gap between the castings so that it does not have to be filled in with concrete. And $4,600 of this is to have the valves that we prefer, that we like to have in our system, installed in lieu of the 12-inch valves that were going to be installed on the project.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Moonlight Municipal Contracting LLC for the 2021 water line replacements project for an amount not to exceed $974,145.13 and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Question, comments, from the commission? Audience? Call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the increase of a purchase order in an amount not to exceed $16,140 for a total cost not to exceed $80,700 for monthly access fees for Marks Radio Communication System equipment from the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, Office of Information Technology, and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second, Estra.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an amendment to the contract with the Ohio Bell Telephone Company doing business as AT&T Ohio for a 1-year extension in connection with certain telephone services for municipal purposes for an amount not to exceed $80,000 and declaring an emergency therein.
Second, Estra.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the au-
Yes.
Okay.
We still have AT&T?
Yes, Commissioner. You might recall about 2.5 years ago, we switched over most of our phone equipment to voice over IP. And, we moved on from the Centrex equipment for most of the city's operations. However, there are certain areas where we cannot get away from having a copper line. Those things such as security alarms, some fax machines, elevator alarms, that sort of thing. Plus, the courts are still on the Centrex system, at least temporarily. We will be, city or the county is upgrading their phone system, and we will participate in that upgrade and be able to drop a number of over half of these lines as we move forward in the future. So we still have not successfully got 100% of our telephone service off of copper lines, but the vast majority of it is.
Thank you. Keep working at it, right?
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Consenting to the reappointment of Alex Went to the City Planning Board.
To adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions, comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. That concludes our agenda. Are there other items to come before us? Commissioner?
I
Mr.
just- I just had one item. I've been asked about our Springfield Summer Arts Festival this year. So I talked to Tim Rao, who is the director. They are still working on performances and how they're gonna do all this. And the question I kept gotten several times was Elvis going to be here? Was there gonna be a tribute to Elvis Presley? And so far, Tim is saying, no, that is just a rumor.
Chris Rob.
When I last talked to Health Commissioner Patterson, he asked me to make a plea for folks to please consider getting vaccinated. It's one of the ways we can clearly defeat COVID, and they run a great operation out at the old Penny store at the mall. So I just want to pass along the encouragement from Commissioner Patterson to please get vaccinated so we can put this COVID behind us. Speaking of which, Brian, I was wondering how we were doing in the city in terms of operations in COVID. Secondly, the South Side development, and then for Mark, how we're doing financially.
Yes, Commissioner. So on the first piece, we're actually doing very well as an organization as it relates to COVID, both exposures and those actually directly impacted with COVID-19. Very low numbers, which is a positive sign. We've also had quite a few staff members across the organization that have been vaccinated, not just with the first shot, but the ones that require second doses. A lot of those have been received as well. So we're doing very well, I think, in terms of our organization and those getting vaccinated, which is a positive sign. Certainly, we are back in the forum live today, which is a great thing. I agree with what Mayor Copeland said as it relates to, I just think being in person and live is part of the democratic process and what we wanted to return to. And I'm glad we're able to do so and still do so safely, still offering virtual options for those that prefer virtual, I think is imperative and important for us to continue. We opened up the buildings April 5th. City Hall opened completely to the public. The first floor income tax and utility billing had opened up earlier in March to help with the tax season. We also extended the tax deadline to May 17th, which followed the federal extension to tax filing. And so our other buildings have opened as well, which is just a positive sign that we're starting to see a return to normal. So we're excited about that. In terms of the South Limestone Corridor, from the transportation project, we continue to work. I was on a call with ODOT yesterday to continue to finalize the funding from the safety funds for that project, and then working to piece together the remaining funds to that, but moving forward with alternative two. And so working with our consultant on the detailed design aspect of that project. So that continues to move forward. And then we continue to have very serious discussions with a potential grocer for the south end of the community. Hopefully to go back into the former Kroger location on South Limestone. I think staff is optimistic that we can move forward with this grocer and hopefully have a solution for our community here very soon.
Great. That delay of income tax payment, and perhaps, Mark, I should correct this to you, is just for individual taxpayers, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner. Business returns are still required to be filed by April 5th.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Mark, how are we doing financially?
Financially, we've just finished the first quarter. We are doing quite well. It's interesting to try and compare it to last year because, last year March was when things kind of shut down and fell apart. And so I think we've rebounded pretty strongly for the city as a whole. The economy seems to be, improving. I won't say it's back to where it was before the pandemic, but it's improving, and we have done well as a city. Our cash balances are strong, and we're tracking well compared to budget.
Thank you.
Anything else from commissioners? Mr. Police Chief. I don't envy you the job you have right now. I know when you've watched television, you don't envy yourself either. let us all be clear that we in Springfield will do everything we can to treat our citizens fairly, not end up with incidents like happened most recently in Minnesota. And I really appreciate your leadership to try to make sure that happens. So, and also we'll tell the citizens, if you haven't picked it up, that we have established a citizens advisory group to help with relationships between the community and the police department. And that is functioning, and we look forward to it being helpful too. So these are difficult times for law enforcement people, but we expect them to do their work carefully, which in some situations is not easy, and to try to keep getting in situations where citizens unfairly get. Anything else from commissioners? Okay, anybody in the audience? Remember, there's a 3-minute limit that hasn't been changed.
You think I'm gonna go over my 3 minutes? First of all, my name is Mike Lowe, and you have my address on file. I would like to have a written copy of how much that the city is paying to have the survey done for the citizens of Springfield. I can pick that up. And I'd also like to have a written copy of how much you're paying the developer at the Kroger's on South Limestone. So you can call me and I will pick those up. I have talked to many people over the last several months, and they're kind of concerned about what's going on in the city. As I was here last year, I brought in these bonuses that the city pays out. But the city doesn't recognize the word as bonuses. They recognize it as longevity or experience pay. So in the year 2020, you paid out $682,085.17 just in bonuses. And then the employees also get their regular pay raise each year. In 2019, you paid out $781,623.59. I really think you guys are out of control with your spending. You send these flyers out. There's no disclaimer on these flyers stating to vote for this. I don't know if the committee is paying for this, if the city's paying for it, who's paying for it. But there's no disclaimer on this literature whatsoever. Same way on this one, there's no disclaimer. You use scare tactics to people to try and get this levy approved. You say, well, we're going to close the fire station down on Commerce Road 5 years ago. Now, I talked to a fireman, and he said, and I'm not giving names, but he said they want to scare people into voting for the levy. So we're going to close the Commerce Road fire station down, and as soon as the levy passed, we're going to open it up. Same way with the Johnny Lytle substation. I don't think it's really being used that much over there. You say in this literature that you're hiring more police officers. Well, let's tell the fact. You might be hiring more police officers, but that's because they're retiring. And we voted many, many years ago that we were supposed to have 124 officers on the force, which we've not been doing that for years. I just think your spending is out of control. You think the citizens of Springfield have an open checkbook. What have you done to cut expenses? I mean, you cut employees 15, 20 years ago, and you still got the job done, but I don't see you cutting anything for, you just keep asking for more money. And some people are really upset about this. So those are some of my concerns that people have addressed to me because they don't want to come down here and talk. I don't have a problem.
You need to wrap up.
I'm finished. You have any questions?
Well, I think some of the things you said are not very accurate, but go ahead.
we combined the 911 center, cutting city staff significantly and saving the taxpayers a lot of money. I assume you must have missed that in the paper when we did it. We
Okay,
combined the 911 communications center. And Brian, how much did we save for the first year?
It was about $735,000.
$735,000 that we saved. So I assume you must have missed that.
no, I did not miss it.
Let me continue.
Go ahead.
No,
Thank you.
You don't talk right now. You let him talk, okay? That's our rule. I'm just.
Our
to chair the
salaries
meeting.
for our safety forces in particular were some of the lowest in this area. We were losing good people to other communities. I don't want to be served by a paramedic who is the low bid paramedic. I want to be served by people who are properly trained and who are committed to this community. We were training them and other communities were taking them because our salaries weren't competitive. Now they are, and we are not having the attrition problem that we did. We have constantly looked at ways to save. We have not been adding staff randomly. In fact, we've been cutting staff. So your premise that we're not keeping an eye on the bottom line flies in the face of every meeting where I ask how we're doing. Our capital needs were pretty outrageous because we had fire trucks that had reached the end of their useful life and needed to be replaced. Again, I want to make sure that equipment will start and run when we need it to be there. The same with the police cruiser. They were at the end of their life. I think this commission has done, very frankly, a good job of balancing all the needs of the community while keeping in mind that in fact the state has reduced the local government supplement by $6 million. It was the state of Ohio who chose to reduce the local government fund. And in fact, during Governor Kasich's administration, his head of budget said, if the taxpayers want it locally, let them pay for it. We're not paying for it anymore, even though there were commitments made when the local government fund was created. We seem to forget that. The state took money away, not just from Springfield, but from all the cities across the state of Ohio. And very frankly, because I served on the task force that looked at the city's spending, had we not passed the levy, this city would be facing bankruptcy. And that's the reality of it. The voters voted wisely to fund the city so we could improve streets, so we could restore the safety forces to full strength without working our people to death, so that we could meet some of our capital obligations for new equipment, so our people weren't using stuff that had sort of worn out, and so we could be competitive. And yes, we saved thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars by combining the dispatch center. And the services have improved. So I don't accept what you're telling me as the truth. In fact, what I'm hearing is most of the people in this community are glad to see more police officers, new equipment, and in particular, new streets. And without this income tax, we can't do those things. It's just that simple. And the answer lies, if you want to go to Columbus and tell them to restore the local government fund, then we won't need this tax increase. We won't.
It's not an
So
increase.
that's the issue.
Just
Okay,
be
so
clear,
wait,
it's not.
Wait. I forgot what it was like to have a meeting like this. We don't go back and forth.
Well, can I just say something?
Very quickly,
I am aware that the 911 in the county and the city are merged. They're not merging till June. None of the dispatchers in the city or the county have lost their job. So I don't see where you're really saving any money yet because it hasn't took place yet.
Brian?
Just to state, actually, the merger consolidation took place January 4th of this year. So they have merged already. And so those are no longer city employees, they are county employees at this. So yes, those savings have started in the 2021 year already. And then also from a police side, we are at 129 currently. Yes, you're right. The charter states 124 minimum. With the levy, we increased that to get up to 130, to authorize a strength of 130. We sit at 129 today. We have another hiring process that the chief is working through right now to make another summer hire. We're going to hire a little bit above the 130 to account for the attrition that we will see throughout the year so that we can maintain and be.
And let's be clear, those minimums are voted by the people. We don't have the choice of going below them on an extended period of time, only when we have a number of folks who've left or retired or whatever. So we don't have the right to reduce police and fire significantly. It's voted by the people.
Just a point of clarity, this is not a tax increase that the city is voting for. This is a tax continuation of the 2.4%. Just want to make sure that was said clearly.
Very
Not
well
an
said.
increase, same.
That
No
is accurate
increase.
and correct, yes.
I have a question, Brian. Did the committee raise money to do the publication and the flyers?
For the publications, yes, the publications that he is referring to are informational pieces. So yeah, they don't say anything about how to vote on the issue. And so those were informational pieces provided out to the community to inform the public. Because again, I believe our best citizen is our most educated citizen. There is a separate committee that has their own literature and information that they're putting out. And yes, they raised funds to put those out on their own.
Okay, anyone else want to speak? David,
Yeah,
good to see
you
you.
know, sometimes you people down here amaze me. You do really amaze me. You guys sit up there, and sometimes you'll amaze me so much you scare me to death. You really do. Some of the things y'all say. Dave gets on people and talks to them any way he wants, and it doesn't matter. If anyone gets on Dave's way he talks to people, you guys complain. But I'm telling you now, if he talks to me like he talks to other people, I'm gonna talk to him the same way back. Because it's a shame the way he acts. Ain't a commissioner up there acts the way he acts. He verbally just strikes out and tried to just tear anybody up and talk to him. He does, and you know it. So I'm telling you, you guys Dave either need to talk to people in a normal way, or he doesn't need to be on the committee. Because that's my opinion. It's an opinion.
He was elected by the people, not by us.
Okay, it's my opinion. He directly attacks people when he don't like what they're saying. Now that you need to talk to him more, and that's the truth. Thank you.
Good to see you. Anybody else
Welcome
want to
back,
speak
David.
to us? Yeah. Anybody else want to speak to us? Last chance. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. I just want to say a couple of things, I guess, after the meeting's over. One is, we will do everything we can to not have incidents happen as have happened in other communities. And we also will work very hard to connect to the people of Springfield in a positive way. This has been difficult during the epidemic. In every city in America, there's been an increase in crime, and people, in parts because people don't have income and they're getting income however they get it. I understand that. So hopefully, as we recover from the disease, it will also mean we recover as how we relate. Okay? Meetings adjourned.